Hello and welcome to this Friday's Facebook Live. If you have been following our blogs, then you will probably know that on Monday I published the first in a series of blogs that are really aimed at talking about how to keep children out of conflict. And the reason for that is really simple. It's because all of the research that has been done looking at children whose parents separate suggests that it's being caught up in the conflict that causes problems for children rather than the fact that their parents are separating in itself. So those children whose parents remain amicable and who demonstrate to them that, there's a good relationship and that the separation is okay, are less likely to struggle with it than those who feel that they're brought into a battleground between their parents where they're being asked to take sides, either explicitly or implicitly, and they feel that they're either being forced to choose between their parents or they very much feel the effects of conflict, and that causes them to really reflect on themselves because they are ultimately a product of that love between two people, and those two people do not love each other anymore and indeed may have very strong negative feelings towards each other. And it's those kind of scenarios that tend to be the ones that result in children suffering from emotional or behavioural or even physical health problems. I would also like to say at this point that I talk about children, and I think very often when parents separate, it's kind of dependent children that are the main focus because they're the ones that still need their parents to make arrangements for them. But adult children can also be affected by their parents' separation. Sometimes parents sort of think that it's okay to bring adult children into things because they're adults, but you still may have that parent-child relationship that means it's really difficult for you to say to your parents, this is unacceptable, I'm not going to be drawn in. And it's something that can affect adults as well as children. So that's what these blogs are going to be focusing on. And in this first blog, the subject has been keeping children. What does it really mean to be keeping children out of arguments? And that might sound like something that people may think is obvious. But actually, I think when you're caught up in a separation, it's actually really hard to kind of draw the boundaries on what is okay and what isn't okay. And certainly it's something I see that people often, when they're separating, start out by thinking, no, we really don't want to be arguing in front of the children, no. And as things go on, things become more difficult. It feels like every single discussion ends in an argument. Those lines get redrawn because it feels impossible to never have words or for there never to be anything between children. And if you've read the blog post, you'll see that I kind of talked a bit more about this and sort of what it involves, and also gave some tips for what you can do if you feel like you're in that situation where your children are being exposed to arguments. I've put the link to the blog on this Facebook post so you can have a look and read those tips. There's a few kind of things that I wanted to go over, which hopefully people will find helpful. Firstly, that is, not arguing in front of your children doesn't mean having the argument downstairs when your children are upstairs. People often think that if the children are out of what is technically earshot, they won't know. And, it's something that I experienced as a child. Your parents waiting till you've gone to bed to have an argument about something. It doesn't mean that children don't know it's happening. Having it in another room or downstairs, where there is shouting or there is kind of raised voices, it's something that children can pick up on. I think also the same is true where you have been having a quieter sort of a heated discussion in another room and you stop when a child walks in. And I think everyone would probably have experience of arriving somewhere and realising that the people you're meeting have just had a large argument, and it doesn't need to be because you've witnessed the argument. You can kind of just feel that energy in the air of, to me, it feels kind of heavy, or there's a sort of tension that you pick up on. Sometimes you might have arrived at friends for dinner and it's obvious they've just had a rather large argument, or, other kind of scenarios like that. And children, more so maybe than grown-ups, pick up on things like that. And the reason I say that is because children are hardwired to know that their survival depends on their parents as baby, from babyhood. And as they go through their lives, they obviously, the whole idea is that children ultimately become more independent. But it does mean that children are often really tuned into their parents and what's going on. And I know as a parent, sometimes you think, really? Children are tuned into what's going on? Because I've been asking them to put their shoes on for at least 5 minutes and nothing's happened. But it's very different when something is happening that can affect their childhood, I suppose, the kind of what's going on for them, that kind of emotional even keel. Things that, if we go back billions of years when people were cavemen, when you keep an ear out for the lion or the bear because there were things that were going to be threatening, it's that kind of hardwired evolution that we have in us that means we're tuned into anything that might be a threat. So children have that with regard to their parents and what's going on, and often they will tune into where there's been an argument or something like that, because that's what they're hardwired to do. And my experience has been that children pick up on things more so than their parents may realise. I also think it's important to notice that it's not just arguments in what we might sort of see as a conventional argument of raised voices or disagreeing. Children can also pick up on things like, when dad says something, mum always rolls her eyes. Or when mum says something, dad makes a joke and the joke feels a bit mean, those kind of things. And it may be quite a subtle thing, and it may be something that you yourself personally haven't necessarily twigged as an issue, because it maybe it's what's always happened, or it's just a habit that you've fallen into lately. But children can really pick up on these things for the reasons that I've just outlined. And all children kind of instinctively know on some level that they are a product of love between two parents. They are half of mum and half of dad. And for them, on different levels, where they see things going wrong between their parents, there can be a real kind of, what does this mean for me? Because I'm half of one and half of the other parent. And if they really hate each other now, what does that mean? Now, I kind of want to clarify that a bit, because it's important to understand that not all children have that thought process as clearly as that, particularly so for younger children. They won't necessarily have that kind of the dialogue in those adult terms, I suppose. But there can be different ways in which this manifests itself in terms of, it can manifest itself as changes in behaviour, but there can also be no outward signs that a child is wrestling with something. And I can give you an example of this just to kind of put it into context of something that's happened to me in my life. When my son started at primary school, we did all the usual things of going to visit the primary school and talking about finding out who the teacher was going to be, and then you find out who the teacher's going to be. And between him finding out who his teacher was going to be and him starting at primary school, the teacher changed for a variety of reasons. And so we then explained, it's not going to be that teacher, it's going to be a different teacher. And she seems very nice. And all the things that you kind of do as a parent to reassure your child that this change is okay. And time went on. We talked a bit about starting school, got the uniform, all of those kind of things. And it was during the time of the summer holidays that we were on a car journey. And my son, who was just over 4.5 at that time, suddenly said to me, "Why didn't the first teacher want to be my teacher?" And in his head, he'd been working over the fact that the teacher had changed, and this thought pattern had come to the fact that that teacher didn't want to be his teacher. And I can honestly say that I had absolutely no idea that any of this was going through his head, or that he was turning this over and trying to make sense with it. And that was coming from a 4-year-old at the time. So that to me is something that's always at the back of my mind when I talk to parents, because of the fact that from my own experience, I know that children can often interpret information that they're given in a different way, and that they can be turning things over in their mind on their own level without us as adults necessarily being wise to it. So if you are in this situation, what can you do? The first thing that, again, I really want to stress in this is that you've probably got it wrong up until this point, because you're a human, and humans, we all get things wrong. If you've got it wrong and you've been getting it wrong for a little while, or you've got it wrong on a few occasions, that doesn't mean that it always has to be wrong. It's always open to anybody in any situation in life to say, right, I haven't done the best I could up until now, but I'm now going to draw a line and I'm going to do it better from now on. And I think that's really important in separation, that you don't beat yourself up for having maybe not got things as right as you could have done when you've been upset or angry, and you draw a line and say things are going to be better from now. All the things I've talked about at the start of this Facebook Live, I think, are really the keys to this, that don't think your children can't pick up on things just because they're in a different room or because they don't know what's going on. If you can, try to find a way to not be dealing with issues that are becoming controversial or becoming sources of dispute whilst you're around your children, then that's obviously a better way of dealing with things. If you can, try to sort of find time with each other away from the house, away from the children, to just talk about things that are difficult, then that can be a useful way to try and avoid that conflict in the house. Where it seems like every single discussion ends up in an argument, that can be such a draining situation to be in, because you're both not on the same page anymore, you're both angry and you're both hurting, and anything can be misinterpreted and blown up and turned around and all of those kind of things. If that's happening, then the most important thing is to try to get some help with dealing with that. That might be coming into mediation to talk about things in mediation. It might be looking at whether it's possible for you to physically separate in the short term to try and take a bit of the heat off before you work out longer arrangements. It might also be getting some help from your doctor or from a therapist to try and help you deal with the emotions so that you don't feel that they're spilling out as much as possible. It can also be really powerful for just one person to stop engaging in the same way so that the discussions don't escalate into an argument. And I've talked about this in blogs and Facebook Lives before, but don't wait for the other person to change their behaviour. Don't think that things can't be any different because the other person won't do this and won't do that. You can make changes yourself. And just by you making changes, this can have little ripples across how the other person deals with things, particularly if things are always escalating into an argument. If you simply don't go there, don't let that happen, don't continue with that, then it's really hard for the other person to deal with things. So that may be a way forward to think about as well. If you're not sure about things, then advice from a lawyer might be helpful as well, just so that you can try and work out what your next steps might be. But the most important thing, I think, is don't stay stuck, because where people are separating and they feel that things aren't moving forward and discussions escalate into arguments, it can often be made worse if you both feel that you are stuck in a particular situation and you can't see a way out of it. And that just makes everybody feel fed up and depressed and very anxious about things. So it's important that there is a kind of way forward, even if it maybe doesn't move as fast as you would like it to. So I hope that that's helpful. There will be the second blog in this series out next week, so keep an eye peeled for that. As always, if you want to get access to our resources more quickly and to find out what's happening at LKW Family Mediation, then sign up for our mailing list. If you're someone who's going through a separation, or you want to try to help support a friend or family member going through a separation, then you can sign up to the mailing list by going to bit.ly/LKW FamMed list. And if you're a professional that works with couples who separate, then sign up for our professionals mailing list, where you get all of our resources again, plus access to all of our training events and networking events and details of any offers that I'm running on those as well. And you can do that via bit.ly/LKW FamMed sign up. And whilst I'm talking about my courses, I have unfortunately had a problem with the listing dates on Eventbrite for all of those, in that they expired. So if you went onto it, it would have told you there was no tickets available. Completely my fault. It is now corrected, so you can book for any of the events. They're all on my website under the 2019 online training program. And the next event is my first networking event on the 23rd of January, when I'm bringing together all professionals who work with either couples or individuals who separate, whether that's for part of your work or all of your work. And the aim is to get us all together so that we can better understand the work that each other do, and hopefully build ourselves new referral networks, which will then benefit all of our clients. There's spaces available for that on the 23rd, and I will put the link to booking that in the comments on this post. So thanks very much for being with me and for watching this week. As always, if you need to get in touch, please do it via the website, and that's lkwfamilymediation.co.uk. And I hope that you have a great weekend. Thanks.